this is a request from Tiana, who asked for some tips and tricks on using coloured pencil for shading. So I'm going to give it a go, see what you think. Give me some feedback and tell me if I was helpful or not. If there's anything else you want to know, let me know. I'll see what I can do. So we're going to use coloured pencil today. And I've got here my Faber-Castell pencils. They're the watercolour pencils. I think you guys all should have those in your pencil cases. They were on the book list. I've got a larger box, so I've probably got a bit more colour choice than you guys, but any coloured pencils work, and you can always mix different brands as well. If you've got some Derwents, you've got some Crayolas, you've got some Faber-Castell, they'll all work together. These are watercolour pencils. So you can put water over the top afterwards, but we're not going to do that today. We're just going to use them as ordinary coloured pencils. One thing I like to do before I start working with coloured pencils is to make sure that they're all sharp. You see that? Nice and sharp. I think that's really key to getting a really crisp, clear shade on your colour. And that you're not going to be scratching the paper when you're working with a coloured pencil. So go ahead and sharpen them all up, make them nice and sharp. And I also like to pick out the colours that I'm going to be using. Now later on, when I finish this little exercise, I'm going to give you an example. We're going to be drawing an apple and a lime. So I've picked colours here that would work for both those fruits. So we've got a nice lot of colours here for apples and a whole bunch of really nice lemon and lime colours for that lime. But for this exercise, I'm just going to use these reds and purples here. Now, one thing that I like to do is get an understanding of how the pencil actually works. And before you go ahead and start drawing a big picture, do a couple of exercises. Even the most experienced drawer needs to have a little bit of a practice here and then and work on their skills. So this is an exercise. I've just drawn this up onto a piece of paper, some squares where you can do your shading and some circles, which I'll show you what we're going to use those for too. So you can just draw them into your sketchbook. I haven't used a ruler. I've just drawn them freehand. And I've used a lid just to create the circles, but you could draw them freehand too. So for the first section of squares here, we're just going to use one colour. I'm going to use this nice purple colour, wine red, and I'm going to show you how to shade just with one coloured pencil. And what we're going to do is we're going to be changing the pressure that you're putting the pencil on the paper with. And that will change the vibrancy of the colour. So let me show you this. So we're going to start really dark, and I'm pushing really hard with my pencil. And you can see I'm really building up that colour with the pencil so that you can't hardly see any of the white underneath. I might actually just put another piece of paper underneath this. It's an old piece, because we're getting the texture of the table through, which isn't helping, so that makes it better. So try and work with a surface that hasn't got any bumps on it, so you'll get a really nice solid colour. And what I'm doing is I'm just pressing quite firmly with my pencil and filling in this box. variation from dark to light. Okay, and that's just using one pencil and varying the pressure that we're placing on the paper with the pencil. So that's the first exercise I want you guys to have a go at. The next exercise we're going to use is looking at blending or mixing two colours together. For this, what I would recommend is that you get a bright or a really bright red, say, or a bright colour, and then something mid-tone. So I'm going to go with maybe this pink here. So we've got two different tones. They're still warm tones. They're still in that colour, the red or pink hue, but we're going to use two different colours for this exercise. It's much the same as the one before. We're going to start again light, heavy rather. It's more of an orange, but it will work. Again, I'm using my pencil quite thick, but this time I'm only using that colour one way. Then I'm going to use my other colour over the top. And we're going to start getting a really nice blend of tone. There we go. So again, we're getting that tonal shade. This one probably should be over here, but that's why we practice. That's why we always improving. It's always a good exercise to do, even though you might be an experienced drawer. It's always important to continue practicing. I'm going to swap it up. A mid and a light. You see those okay? A dark, a mid, and a light. And we're going to do the same technique here, but obviously bringing in another colour so that we get a wider variation of tonal range through that section. So again, starting with the dark. I like that colour. You can see how I'm really pressing quite firmly with that, holding my pencil like this. Okay, that's a proper pen grip. I find if you hold your pencil too close down the end there, you're not going to get as much movement. So I like to hold it sort of middle or 2/3 down. This is using 3, this is using 2, and this is using 1. And you can see the depth of variation is a lot stronger with the more tones that you use or the more colours that you use. All right, we're going to move over to the circles here. Now, because we're going to be drawing an apple later on, I want to show you how to make something look round when you're shading. And there's a few techniques that we can use for that, and I'm going to show you a couple of them now. The first one is that we're going to do some overlapping strokes. So I might use this colour here. And we're just going to, again, use that technique that we've used here with going dark. And we're just overlapping the strokes a little bit. And I'm using that technique of going from using a heavy hand or pressing quite hard with a pencil to light. Now I'm imagining that our light source, so where our light is coming from, is up here. So obviously the light is going to hit this sphere up here. The darker side is going to be on this. Alright, for this guy here, we're going to use some cross-hatching, which is my favourite, and you'll probably have seen me already using cross-hatching here, and I'm sure you're probably fairly familiar with that technique. When we're doing something round, again, we need to be using a curved stroke, curved cross-hatching, rather than straight, because we want it to make it look like it's round. So again, pressing quite hard, and you can see I'm using those curved strokes. I'm pretending my light source is the same spot. Curving them. That's with one colour and using it quite dark, particularly on the edge there. And then with another tone, let's go this lighter orange. Oh, I'm going to bring this back. And that's your cross-hatching technique. Again, using a combination of pressure and curved strokes and a mix of colour. One, I'm going to show you two different techniques in one because I've only got one circle left. Some of you might know this technique already, called stippling. Stippling is just using dots or small dashes to build up the shading on something. So it works best with pencil, I think, if they're little dashes. Dots are sort of really hard to see. So just small dashes. And blending it out with the pressure again. So it's all about the pressure that you're pushing the pencil onto the paper as to whether you get a really dark shadow or a lighter area. Last technique we're going to do, I'll do it down here, is using some modelling lines or some contour lines. So starting small and quite heavy and then building out lighter like this. Ignore this for this circle, and you can see how that's starting to look rounder than before. The light source from here you're going to need a shadow. Now, a myth that I think I'm going to bust for you is that shadows don't have to be black. They might appear to be black when we look at them, but if you add a black shadow to everything that you draw, your dark is going to be too dark. So I like to think of the shadows as being a mix of your greys and of the colour that you actually use. So if I was going to put a shadow on the surface of where this ball is sitting, I would use a few different tones rather than just use black. Now where the ball is sitting on the surface is going to be dark. And then as we go out, again changing the pressure, it's going to appear lighter as we go. Now there's two reasons I like to use the actual colour of the drawing for the shadow and not just black, is because I like to create what's called colour harmony. So it shows that there's connection between this object and the shadow. If we do just too black, it's going to be too harsh and it's not going to show harmony, or unity is another way of calling it. I'm creating a round shadow because it's a round ball. Now these are some greys. If you don't have grey, you could probably use a fine liner or even a brown or a really light black, not by pushing too hard, or even a navy would work too. And I'm just going to add a little bit of the grey right at the base, but I'm not going to just do the whole shadow black. There you go. A couple of other things that I'm going to bust for you is shading with your fingers. I don't think that's a very good idea. Some people really like to really get stuck in there with their fingers and smudge. I find that once you start doing that, you end up getting dirty fingers for a start, and you start losing the clarity of your picture. So I would avoid using your finger to smudge, particularly with coloured pencil. I think it's all about the overlapping of colour and the pressure that you're using on the pencil, rather than needing to opt for your finger or a shading stub or anything like that. It's not necessary. It's all about just the pencil. I'm just going to go over this because I feel like it. You can see that there's some little white areas through. Probably can cover that up and continue layering. Shading with coloured pencil takes some time. I think people can generally rush and think it's just like colouring in, like a colouring in book. But if you really want it to show a light and dark and start appearing to look 3D or have some depth and tone, you need to take some time with it and really work it. There you go. So that's my little exercise for you guys that you can do in your sketchbooks just to have a practice. I'm going to show you this in practice with our drawing of an apple. You can draw along at home if you have an apple or a lime or any piece of fruit. I find they're really useful, simple shapes to practice your rendering skills. And then once you master those a little bit more, you can go on to something a little bit more detailed with more colour variety. So I'll move on to that in a moment. Okay, so now I'm going to draw our apples. And I'll do a time lapse so that you can watch the process as we go. And I hope that you enjoy seeing how the techniques that I taught you are being put into place. Enjoy!